Hey, what's up, guys? This is part 3 to my mini-series 4K journey slash nightmare and what you can learn. Part 1 covered the Samsung JS9000 or 9500. That was 65 inches. Awesome TV, edge lit from the sides. The only issue that I had was really my fault for not really looking at the specifications in regards to pass-through with my current equipment, my AV receiver. Thus, I would have lost those lossless codecs like DTS HD, Dolby HD, and I wouldn't have had 7.2 surround. I would have had 5.1 Dolby Digital. So the first lesson I learned with that display was really check what's compatible. Is it compatible with your sound bar? Is it compatible HDMI wise with all of your equipment? Everything in the chain has to be able to work. It'd be very hard to buy a new TV and realize, okay, I love having a new display. However, it's not compatible with my current stuff, so I lose half of my other part. For me, the audio is more important, or if not as important as the video. Second thing was the TV was 65 inches, but it was a 65 series, meaning that it's not fully 65 inches, but the TV that it was replacing was 65 inches, and that was a Panasonic Plasma. So in effect, you have to allow for these newer displays with the smaller bezels. So when you're buying TVs of the same size, just keep in mind that TV might have a smaller profile. It might appear smaller on your AV rack or on your wall. So allow for displays to be larger by the next size up, but just be careful buying one of equal size. You will find that TV appear smaller. Secondly was the Vizio P Series. My mistake there was trusting every single review out there. The Vizio was considered the best bang for the buck. Wasn't quite as bright as the others, but had very, very deep blacks, and more importantly, had the fastest input lag of any LED that year. It was also full array with many zones. My issue or the problem I had with the Vizio was I fell in love with the numbers. Like a lot of you guys, I read every single thing I could on it and just really made up my mind. And even when I went to Best Buy and looked at it in the showroom, I wasn't blown away. But it just didn't look as bright as the others. But coming from Plasma, I wasn't really too worried about that. I purchased the display not realizing that HDMI 5, which is their fastest HDMI, 17 milliseconds, didn't have HDR. And it was also waiting for an HDR10 update. I chased the Dolby Vision, which I wasn't super impressed with. The TV wasn't actually bright enough to take advantage of Dolby Vision's strengths. It also developed a green line through the top of the screen on two models. Now, in all fairness, I think the green line is actually something that could have been updated down the road. But the point of the story with the Vizio, guys, was not to trust every single review or reviewer that I hear. There wasn't a lot of people showing footage of their TVs, on that specific one. I talked to a couple people on YouTube, but the lesson for that one was take your DVDs into Best Buy. Have them hand you the remote and then just at least let your Blu-rays see what they look like. And if they don't blow your mind, regardless of the reviews, don't trust them. CNET had this TV above everyone else's TV. The Vizio blew away everything else, and I just couldn't understand. David Katzenmeyer, I've always trusted him, but it was very lazy. He was going by the bang for the buck, which isn't always the most important. So those two were done. You can find those videos, part 1 and part 2, further back in the library. Part 3 is where my heart starts to break because I was in contact with artings.com. I'm going to show you some pictures through my iPad. And the next display that I chose was the KS9000. And the KS9000 is a lot like, if you guys can think of the Sony 930E, but 75 inches, gorgeous, beautiful styling, silver, bezel-less, 1300 nits, very good motion, 19 milliseconds in input lag, gorgeous colors, and the kind of image that you were seeing was tremendous. So I got it home, and right away the peak brightness blew me out of my seat. I was like, whoa, this is the TV for me. I am all set. Everything that looked dim on the Vizio was now brought to life on the KS9000. Now, where it did struggle, and I have talked to some of you guys about going from plasma to LED, was not really being aware so much of flashlighting. And I'd seen clouding on displays before, but I had never seen flashlighting. Now, don't look at the white, but look here. That is flashlighting. That is where the LEDs are actually jutting light into the borders. Now, this didn't happen back with the other Samsungs because they were edge lit from the side. So I'm looking at this amazing brightness. I'm looking at all these beautiful visuals, but I could not get away from that. I couldn't get away from seeing that in the black bars. So I was told that that was acceptable. The problem is I was seeing it during content. I was seeing it in the black bars. I was seeing it literally like flashlights shooting up. And then I noticed one of many dead pixels. And then I was told that that was within Samsung's range. So I brought it back to Best Buy, and that's a little farther away, but you can see it. And I told her that was acceptable. There's another shot of it. It's a different one. I brought that one back. Now I had, I want to say, 3 or 4 KS9000s, and each one, this is another. That's with local dimming on high. And guys, these TVs, they I'm ashamed to say how much they were. They were $7,000, these displays. So my example with the KS9000 was trying to buy my way to the top. Basically, ignoring other displays and then saying, okay, well, what's the next best thing? And I went from a $4,000 Vizio. I didn't jump up $500. I didn't jump up, even $1,000. I went more than 50% past my original investment. So you guys have all been there with your husbands, your wives, your partners, where you've allocated a certain amount of money in your budget. And then you're like, well, look, if I just get this, I'll be all set. I'll be on to the next one. It'll be great. This will be the one that'll fix everything. And it just really isn't the case. So what you end up with is spending more than you ever wanted to, and you get something that's defective. And now you're totally shocked. You can't believe, oh my God, I spent this much money. Why is there an issue? I always compare things to vehicles. If I bought the highest end Audi or BMW or Mercedes, I'm saying to myself, why do I have this? Why do I have problems? Well, the more money you spend, I found, the more bells and whistles that are involved in displays, the more that can go wrong. And so I went through a couple of those. You saw 2 different versions of the flashlighting that I had. Here's another. And that was on my last one. So I went through all of those, and the very, very last KS9000 had an issue with local dimming. Now, if you look at the power button here, if you look at that column that goes that way, okay, see how the top is dimmer than the bottom. Now, I know that looks like it's banding. What it really was a broken local dimming line. So I would be playing a game, and the line would literally, you would literally see up in the skybox, this would just bob up and down. So I had either broken zones, but the local dimming was being affected. And the next thing I did, guys, was I went even a step further. I went with the KS9500, which was now another $1,000. And actually, this is the, here, now that's the KS9500. That was a 78-inch curved display. So now you're looking at 3, 4, 5. I'd had 5 or 6 of these displays, high end, and I was just told that's the way it was. And that was really my mistake with the KS series. If you have one that is great, much like the KS9000 series, which was so popular, it was just this luck of the draw. And as you're seeing with the Sony 930E, the 900E, the OLEDs, it's really hard to trust what is the real technology or is luck of the draw. And all of these videos for this piece that we're talking about, the nightmare aspect of it, I can't really say that it's Samsung's fault or it's LG's fault. It seems like they all have this panel lottery issue. What I'm trying to convey to you guys is that don't get too hung up on the highest of high. Don't get too hung up thinking, all right, well, look, I spent this much money. I should be all set. You know, when you end up spending $7,000 and things look like that. You know, so just because you spent that money doesn't mean you're not going to have banding or screen uniformity or dead pixels. So the KS9000 was beautiful in all the ways. Again, I was chasing the numbers, high peak brightness. I was chasing 1300 nits. I was chasing all these things. I didn't pay attention to the columns of light that showed up with the blooming. I didn't pay attention to those things. And to my own detriment, all the time and money I spent, I just started getting unreasonable in terms of cost. So I went from saying, okay, I have $4,000 spent on a Vizio. This is what I want. And that went up to $7,000 for a KS series, and then closer to $8,000 for the 7800, because that was actually on sale. I'll do a separate video on the 9800 and the Sony 940E where I got up to almost 10 grand. So 4K nightmare, where's the nightmare? Well, it's the hardship of spending all this money. It's also all the time haggling to bring it back. It's also the waiting for the drivers who give you a 5-hour window. It's tipping the drivers. It's having somebody into your home. And it's also the insanity, or you feel insane going back to the store and talking to these guys and explaining to them your issue. It's also talking to guys like Artings that are responding back. You know, they'll tell you, you know, you're not being unreasonable, but hey, this happens here and there. That's the line you won't say. So we're going back and forth kind of talking, making me feel a little bit nuts, but they're like, hey, that's just the way they are. You know, dead pixels are fine. And I'm telling you guys, dead pixels are not fine. They're not fine on a $200 TV, but they sure as hell better not be fine on a 75-inch $7,000 TV. These are things that aren't okay. So stand by your guns, and also don't always chase every single metric as far as peak brightness. Look at the small parts of the reviews that talk about terrible blooming or the local dimming isn't working properly. You know, I didn't realize that the local dimming was such a big deal. I didn't realize that when I was playing a video game, I would see the line literally bob down the screen. Pretty distracting. Look for things like dirty screen effect. All those Samsungs had terrible banding, which is a little bit more of a risk, guys, when you are up into the 75-inch range. And that is also important. The bigger you go in size, the less amount of choice, and there isn't that much variety. You know, the LG OLEDs, the displays I really kind of wanted, 75 inches were like 20 grand at the time. Sony only had one at that year in 2016. Samsung had a couple. So there was very little to choose from. So just be mindful of that. Just be mindful of, as high-end as they are, you have to really test these displays. And the part about being a little crazy is don't feel bad about going back in and telling these guys or girls, hey, look, this is not acceptable. I shouldn't have this kind of bleeding. I shouldn't have dead pixels. And sometimes, you know, like even if you deal with Samsung directly, you have to be able to, or my advice is to try and deal with the retailer for as long as you possibly can. Because when you start getting and dealing with the actual manufacturer, they can easily just tell you, hey, tough. You're hearing that with OLEDs and burn-in. They're basically saying, hey, that's just the way it is, you know, good luck. You know, so that's pretty visible. And they were all over the screen. So in short of a very long video, guys, is that the more money you spend, the more issues you may have. Don't feel like you need to spend every single dollar you can. The KS9000 was a gorgeous display, guys. I mean, it was beautiful. The color was beautiful. Probably one thing I didn't like about it was when I went to use a PC, it locked me into dynamic or standard. I lost almost all the... If I used 4x4x4 chroma, I wasn't able to use the other presets. I didn't like that it wasn't that customizable in terms of picture quality. You really couldn't mess with picture quality. There wasn't a lot of settings to mess around with. Had a very good motion, very, very gorgeous colors. And the reason why I do these videos too, guys, is that the KS9000 is available now on Amazon, and you can probably pick up that same display for $2,000, maybe even less. That's when you might say, hey, you know what, I don't mind some clouding in the corner for a gorgeous 75-inch display. But just think in terms of how much you would spend at $7,000. And a lot of us that are buying these displays, I talk to you guys every day, you're spending so much money and you're like, I think I might be okay with this. It's one thing if you're saying I'm not loving it, but to say that I am okay with a defect is hard to swallow. That's a tough one. If you're saying, hey, you know what, I don't know, this TV's not really as bright as I would like, that's really your preference on if you like everything about it. Not every display is going to be perfect, but saying I'm okay with that dead pixel on a brand new display, or I'm okay with a vertical banding right down the middle of the screen, those are things that are not going to get better over time. They're only going to get worse, or they're going to make you're going to be more sensitive to them. And I just feel like for the price of these things, you should not have to settle. So that was part 3, guys, on the Samsung KS9000. If you have any questions on the KS9000, the Vizio P Series, in their own way, they're all very, very good, especially the KS9000. It's just getting a good one. The KS8000 was arguably 2016's most popular display, but it had issues with bleeding, flashlighting, things like that. I don't think it was as obvious at 65 inches, but at 75 inches, guys, it's very, very hard to control that kind of screen uniformity. So I can't really recommend it at full price. If you find one in the secondhand market or refurbished and you don't mind having some of those issues, then it's an amazing display. But that was part 3, guys. I had 11 TVs in total. So we went with the Samsung, the Vizio. I had a bunch of these, KS9000, and then the KS9500, which was a 78-inch curved variant. One last thing on curved displays, guys, is the curved displays, at a huge size, I thought I liked the immersion. I liked having the curved look to it. But be mindful that the screen uniformity gets almost twice as bad on a curved display, whether it's the glass, but vertical banding, dirty screen effect on a curved screen, especially a large one, made it that much more evident. So keep that in mind if you happen to see a curved display. I'm not seeing many of them coming up, but that's really all I have on the KS9000, the KS9500. And please, in the comments, if you have any questions, please ask me. Thank you for being patient with content, guys, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you as always.